I sold, you know, the idea of this fall tour to you guys on the basis of going to the Rust Belt. And I really just, as an atheist, I wanted to go to Bethlehem. And I don't really know why, but the Rust Belt had always sort of fascinated me, these, you know, industry that's shut down. And of course we get to Bethlehem and what do we find? But the former site of Bethlehem Steel is now owned by a casino. and there's the public television station is there, and there's a cafe.
Although they have left the coking towers up, and they're pretty impressive.
The coking towers were beautiful, certainly. But we went in search of something and it wasn't there. And then we completely abandoned the plan and went riding instead. You know, although we abandoned the plan, I mean, Pennsylvania is such a great place to ride, and even though we were sort of tormented by the weather. That's what I find about touring, is that when you hit the perfect road and it's wet, and you just want to go, but you have to use restraint.
That was restraint?
That was restraint. It's really hard to know. I still have no sense really of tire adhesion in the wet, because some of those corners are off camber, and then the pavement changes, and then there's gravel. And then of course, right when I'm thinking, oh, I could probably go faster, we see that car upside down, and the guy with the welt in his head, who'd flipped his car, and I guess we were the second people there. So Tim, you've been whipping through the corners on this thing. What do you think of this bike?
I'm pleasantly surprised. It's I'm liking it more than I thought I was going to, frankly.
What were your concerns before you rode it?
I just didn't know it. I know it's the heaviest of the bunch that we're dealing with here, and I was a little worried about that. But I haven't noticed the weight to be a problem at all.
Give me the points you like about this bike.
I like the wide bars. It's, I mean, in classic big traily fashion, it's very maneuverable. It's got good power. For the riding we're doing here in this countryside and this weather, there's ample protection, ample comfort. I can move around on the seat. I can move around and get a little bit more comfort that way. It's well equipped. It has a couple of modes, sport and touring mode, which are fun to play with.
What didn't you like about this bike?
The thing I noticed the most that I don't like about the bike is the side stand. The geometry is a little bit odd. First of all, the actuator is very, very close to the peg, so it's a bit finicky to try and get your foot onto it to begin with. But then when you do, and you step down, you come to the end of the travel and the lever hasn't actually moved into its engaged position. You've got to actually sort of bring your foot around and up. And that's, I find, a little bit awkward. What I've been doing for the duration of the trip is just simply catching the end plate and swinging it into position that way. And it works just fine that way. So that's what I've been doing. I've been ignoring the lever. The Ducati and I didn't get along well initially. I found that it wasn't as tractable as I like at lower speeds if we're just puttering around, but boy, when you twist it on, it goes.
What happened at those lower speeds?
I just found it stuttering. I found it rough. It seems to need about 3,000 RPM to really smooth out, clear its throat, and get going. But then when it does, boy, it rocks. It's a very fast bike.
And of course the problem is at 3,000 RPM in first gear, because of the tall gearing, you're actually going pretty fast.
Yeah.
So it's hard to go through a town. You need a gear lower than first.
And with the pipes on it, it's not a discrete bike in any way.
But that power, which you finally tapped into as the trip wore on, I mean, what was that like?
It's intoxicating, frankly. It's probably the most powerful bike I've ever ridden, that one.
So Steve, as a former GSXR owner, we gave you the Suzuki. And not just because of your inseam and because it has the lowest seat, but what do you think of this thing?
I really liked it. It fits me, first of all. I feel comfortable getting on it, getting off it, putting down the side stand on any kind of surface. Pulling U-turns, it does fit my inseam. But I also liked most of its characteristics.
You're riding pretty hard back there through the corners. So.
Yeah, and I felt pretty comfortable doing it. The bike is nice and really feels stable and comfortable, and I felt like I could have gone faster if I had the nerve to do it.
What I found was switching from the Ducati, which is such tall gearing as we talked about, and to this thing, you can go through towns in 6th gear. It's hard to go through a town in the Ducati in 2nd gear. This engine is just so flexible. It's one of its appeals, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got a really flat torque curve, and that is appealing. From 3,000 up to 9,000, there's not a whole lot of difference in the amount of torque you're getting, I guess.
Is there anything you didn't like about this bike?
Just one thing. I didn't like the lip on the windscreen here. It can get a little bit stuck.
Do you just grab it?
You just grab it, and you have to twist and push. So it rotates and pushes down at the same time, and you can see now. And it's meant to be operated on the fly. So if I was doing this while I was riding, I might be running into the Volkswagen in front of me, trying to adjust my windscreen.
I think you absolutely would hit probably me in front of you if you tried to do that on the fly. So thank you for not trying. Now, how tall are you?
5'9".
This is really the only bike of the group that you didn't struggle a little bit with the tippy toe thing, wasn't it? They're all fairly tall.
Yeah, you could say that.
I mean, the BMW is certainly the most, but even the Super Ténéré and the Ducati were a little bit tall.
They were a little bit tall. I didn't feel uncomfortable on the Super Ténéré. After I got used to it, I did feel uncomfortable at times on the Ducati and especially on the BMW. Just getting on, getting off, getting the side stand up and down, that kind of thing.
The GS I really liked. I found that I would have preferred the standard version. That bike is even, especially when the seat's in the tall positions, even tall for me. The standard GS version is lower to the ground than this adventure version. And the standard version, frankly, is more nimble, and you don't need this extra, unless you're going to go to Belize, which you're not. The standard version is better. This is the thing about BMW twins, is when I first rode them, it seemed a little clunky, but they're the kind of bike that if you ride 400 or 500 or 600 kilometers in a day, at the end of the day, things about them seem much more rational. You know, how you access the controls, easy it is to shut off the ABS, the heated hand grips, everything just seems where you want it to be.
I had a problem with the turn signals at first, but within an hour or two I was using them without thinking.
There was lots of tooting going on behind me, which was just people stabbing the wrong button anyway, so you can't blame the BMW for that, can we?
No, not when there's people involved, no.
People are always the weak point, I find.
People, the weak link.
Working with you, I found that people are the weak point.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.